Yellowstone National Park is home to the world's largest active volcano, but should you worry about an eruption? In the last 640,000 years, the Yellowstone Supervolcano has had 6 super eruptions. If it were to erupt again, the damage could be catastrophic. So what are the chances of that happening? And how would such an event impact the rest of the world? This is What If, and here's everything you need to know about Yellowstone Volcano. The Yellowstone Supervolcano sits in the aptly named Yellowstone National Park. Most people don't realize that the park actually sits on top of the magma chamber of a gigantic volcano. The area surrounding the park is part of the greater Yellowstone Supervolcano, which is more than 43 by 29 miles across. That's about the size of Los Angeles. But this LA is much hotter. Most people associate volcanoes with the mountainous terrain of Italy or Japan, but Yellowstone is technically a supervolcano. Supervolcanoes aren't classified by height, but rather by their ability to blow massive amounts of material out of the opening. In fact, they are ranked based on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI. Each letter represents different characteristics of volcanic eruptions from A, the smallest, to P, the largest. When a volcano reaches level 8, also known as the VEI 8, it's considered a super eruption. These types of eruptions can eject over 1,000 cubic kilometers of material during an explosion, which is enough to cover the whole of the United States in more than 1 foot of ash if it were to occur in the continental US. Scientists measure the magnitude of past eruptions by looking at the volume of material ejected and the height of the ash plume. With this method, the largest 3 eruptions on Earth all take place in the Yellowstone Supervolcano. The first was 2.1 million years ago when the supervolcano erupted with a VEI of 8. The second was 1.3 million years ago and had the same VEI rating as the first. The third occurred 640,000 years ago and was the most violent, reaching a VEI of 9. This eruption was so powerful that it sent 250 cubic kilometers of ash into the air, and the fine ash particles traveled all the way around the globe. These events have created the Yellowstone caldera, which is the 5th largest in the world. A caldera is essentially a giant crater formed after a magma chamber gets emptied during an eruption. Over time, these calderas can fill with water to form lakes like Crater Lake in Oregon. However, the Yellowstone caldera is still filled with molten rock. If it erupts again, scientists estimate it will send 1,000 cubic kilometers of ash into the air, making it one of the largest eruptions of the next few million years. Although Yellowstone hasn't erupted in more than 600,000 years, its most recent eruption may have been more active than previously thought. Some scientists believe that the last eruption was actually a series of smaller eruptions spread out over several thousand years instead of a single event. This means that the average interval between eruptions is closer to 400,000 years, rather than the previously assumed 640,000-year gap. Either way, we are overdue for an eruption. While a Yellowstone supereruption would be devastating, it wouldn't be entirely unexpected. Scientists have been monitoring the volcano for decades, and they keep a close eye on various indicators. One such indicator is seismic activity. Earthquakes happen naturally and are normal in areas with tectonic plate boundaries. However, an increase in earthquakes in an area that's usually quiet can indicate magma movement beneath the surface. Since 1985, there has been a noticeable increase in earthquake activity in the Yellowstone region. Scientists closely monitor any change in activity because they can use it to learn more about the magma chamber below the surface. Yellowstone also releases gases, including steam, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and sulfur dioxide. Monitoring the gases helps scientists understand how magma interacts with rock deep underground. Increased gas emissions could mean that magma is rising toward the surface. While increased gas emissions alone don't necessarily indicate an imminent eruption, they are something that experts keep a close eye on. Yellowstone's most obvious telltale sign of unrest is the uplift of the land. Scientists regularly measure changes in elevation at hundreds of points across the park and surrounding areas. Changes in elevation can indicate that magma is moving through the crust. In the last decade, Parts of Yellowstone have risen by nearly 3 inches per year. If Yellowstone were to erupt, it would be devastating for everyone nearby. The surrounding states would likely become uninhabitable for some time. However, other parts of the world would see relatively minor effects. Ash and volcanic debris would eventually fall back down to Earth, covering parts of the western United States in a thick layer of ash. Scientists predict that Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming would be covered in 6 inches or more of ash. Parts of Utah, Nevada, and Oregon would get 3 to 6 inches. The ash would also contain small rocks and glass particles called tephra. Tephra can have long-term effects on the environment. Areas close to the volcano would receive the most ash and tephra, but winds would carry smaller particles thousands of miles away. A study found that even areas more than 500 miles away would receive more than 1 inch of ash. The ash would contain fluorine, which could negatively affect soil quality and vegetation. But it wouldn't be the worst part of the eruption. The real danger would come from the pyroclastic flows. Pyroclastic flows are fast-moving currents of hot gas and solid debris. They travel incredibly quickly and can reach temperatures as high as 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 1,000 degrees Celsius. Anything in the flow's path would be incinerated. So anything within 20 miles of the volcano would be completely destroyed. Hot pyroclastic flows could travel as far as 100 miles outside of the park. And since the nearest town is just 40 miles away, it would likely be wiped off the map. But what if the eruption were even bigger? It's impossible to predict exactly what would happen. But a recent study did offer some insights. Researchers used computer models to simulate the effects of a massive Yellowstone eruption. They found that the entire state of Montana would be buried under more than 6 inches of ash. Wyoming would be hit with 3 to 6 inches, and Idaho would get about 1 to 3 inches. Although the eruption would be devastating for the immediate area, researchers discovered that almost half of all counties in the contiguous United States would receive between 1 and 2 inches of ash. Not only that, but the ash cloud would make its way around the globe. Luckily, we're not expecting a super eruption anytime soon. Experts say that the odds of it happening in the next 1,000 years are about 1 in 700. So what about the chances of a smaller eruption? There's no way of telling when a smaller eruption might occur, but scientists do monitor seismic activity. For now, it seems that the chance of a smaller eruption is low. Yellowstone has a lot of seismic activity, but most of it is pretty minor. Earthquakes range in strength from 0 to 10 on the Richter scale. Most of Yellowstone's earthquakes are between 3 and 5. While those are still noticeable, they aren't strong enough to cause any damage. Occasionally, a stronger earthquake will strike the area. On January 12, 1985, a magnitude 7.3 earthquake struck near the town of Land Park, less than 50 miles from the park's northern border. It was felt throughout the region and damaged buildings as far away as Utah. To put that in perspective, a magnitude 7.3 earthquake in California would probably destroy multiple buildings and injure hundreds of people. However, the 1985 quake in Yellowstone caused no major damage. That's because the earthquake occurred at a depth of about 10 kilometers. Earthquakes that occur deeper in the crust tend to release energy more gradually, resulting in less damage. However, a shallow earthquake could certainly cause damage in the surrounding areas. So while there have been some earthquakes in the Yellowstone region that have caused minor damage, none have been strong enough to cause widespread devastation. And a larger earthquake in the region could pose a threat to the nearby towns and cities. Should you be worried about Yellowstone erupting? Probably not. But you should keep up to date on the latest findings from experts. You can visit the official website for Yellowstone National Park to stay informed. Their website offers updates from the USGS, Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, and other reputable organizations. You can also learn about other natural wonders in the area, like geysers and bison. Yellowstone National Park receives millions of visitors each year, and for good reason. It's home to some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world, including the largest concentration of geysers. The park also has the largest elk population in the country, and is home to other animals like bison, wolves, and grizzly bears. People visit from around the world to experience the amazing geothermal features. Nearly half of the park is made up of these features, which include geysers, hot springs, and mud pots. The most famous geyser is Old Faithful, which erupts every 90 minutes. The truth is, we will never be able to accurately predict volcanic eruptions. Even though science has come a long way in recent years, there's still so much that we don't know. So if you live near Yellowstone or plan on visiting, you should always check for updates before you go. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts on Yellowstone National Park and its supervolcano in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can join us for our next